Namaskar, and a very warm welcome to all of you in this episode. Today, I'd like to talk to you all regarding one particular gap which sometimes remains, that even the experts of the teachers are not able to make much of a difference on the learning of the children there in the classroom or otherwise. Same is the case when we take an expert in a particular field, talking to the people, training them in a particular skill, and fails to make that much of an impact. Similarly, there are parents at home who are trying to make their children learn certain things which are really great to be learned, but they are also not able to make that much of a difference as they would like to. Because in these three cases, you would find that a teacher is an expert, a professional is an expert in that particular field, and the parents, of course, are very experienced and they have a lot of knowledge, so should be able to make learning very easy for their children. But in these three cases, many times the learning does not happen that way as they would like to. Now I take them a little in detail. Take the case of teachers. There would be teachers who would be preparing their lesson so well. They would be working very hard for that, so that the learning in the classroom is absolutely impactful. They have all their presentations, they have all their slides, they have all their questions, all their videos which are required to make that learning as effective as possible. But while delivering the lesson, they find in the middle of the lesson or at the end of the lesson that many children could not really comprehend what was taught to them. Similarly, somebody hires a very, very experienced person who is expert in a particular field to train the people who would have joined an organization or an institution very recently. And that trainer is trying to, because that trainer being absolutely skilled in that particular field, is making all efforts to make learning as effective as possible. But there also, sometimes, rather many times, it does not happen that way. And I mentioned about the parents as well. Now, what is that problem, which is, despite the fact those experts are so skilled, they are so experienced, and they are so committed to really making people learn, but they're still not able to make that impactful learning. So what is that problem? What is that? Sometimes when I talk in case of the teachers, they take it like maybe my pace was very fast, maybe the children were not really focusing there in the classroom, they would be thinking something else, or maybe the topic was very difficult. Now, these factors might contribute in making learning a little less impactful. But when I was searching, I came across one particular concept, and that concept to me was very, very surprising. I was astonished when I came across that particular concept. And they say that there is some blind spot, which the experts of the teachers and the parents are not able to see. And that blind spot has been told by them as a gap in learning, and that gap is responsible for the learning not being that impactful. And ultimately they mentioned it as the curse of knowledge. Curse of knowledge really came. I was just trying to learn more about it, and more I learned, more obvious it seemed to me. Though I did not think about it that way before, then of course, but somewhere hidden was the idea, yes, there is that kind of gap, that expert people consider themselves as that effective that whatever they say, the beginners, the novice would be able to understand it without a problem. They're so focused on their teaching, and at times they really forget about the difficulties by the learner. So to make this particular thing clear to all of us, let us consider an example. And that example is from the experiment which was conducted in Stanford University in 1990 by Newton Elizabeth. And in that experiment, there were two groups of students taken, and they all were told about very popular songs of that particular time. Now, one particular group was named as tappers, and the other one was listeners. So the job of the tappers was to play those popular songs by tapping it on the top of the table. And based on that, the listeners were to guess what was that particular song. So the songs were known to everyone. The tappers were very clear about what they were going to play, and the listeners were the ones who were to guess it. They were to guess it based on the rhythm of tap on the top of the table. The tappers were asked that how many songs the listeners would be able to guess correct. And the tappers were very sure that 50% of them would definitely be able to guess the songs correct. But finally, when this experiment was carried out, what was found was again very, very disturbing. And what they found was that only 2.5% of the songs were guessed correct. They expected 50%, whereas the listeners could guess only 2.5% songs as the correct songs. So what was happening here in this process? Let us try to understand that. While the tapers were playing those songs, they had all the instruments in their head, they had all the rhythms in their head, all the tones, the words in their head, and those words, tones, rhythms were to be translated into some visible thing to the listeners. But what they were able to do, tuck, 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 depending upon what is the pace of the song and what is the loudness, the volume of a particular tone. So they tried their level best because they were absolutely clear in their head what they were doing. But look at the listeners. What the listeners were having access to, and that access was only to listening to those thuds, those taps. And based on that, they were to really guess it. Though these tappers, who can be made equivalent to the teachers or the experts. So if I replace these tappers by experts or teachers and the listeners by the students or the learners or the trainees. So now see, so when as an expert, somebody is talking to the beginners, that expert is having the entire knowledge, the experience, the concepts and everything in his head or in her head. But the same thing is not visible to the ones who are the learners. They are not able to see those things at all until and unless that expert is capable of making those things absolutely visible to them. And when the expert is not able to make them visible to the learners, then that gap would always be there, and the learning may not be that effective as the expert should have really got by teaching those particular concepts or giving those skills to them. So this particular experiment tells us that experts at times become victim of their expertise. And they're now blinded by that, and they forget about what would have been the problem faced by those learners, because those learners are knowing those concepts the first time, or maybe the complexity of those concepts the first time. The experts tend to forget about that there was a time when they were the learner, they also had a lot of cognitive load while trying to understand those concepts. And here I remember one more incident and one more anecdote which will make things absolutely clear to all of us. And that is a story from Swami Vivekanandaji's life. Like Swami Vivekanandaji was once reading a book in a library, and he was turning the pages at a very fast pace. So the librarian was looking at him, and he was thinking that probably Swamiji is wanting to search for one particular page or one particular information. So he went to him and said, Swamiji, what are you searching for? And Swamiji replied that I am reading the book. So the library in charge was really surprised that how can somebody read the book by turning the pages so fast? Swamiji could guess the dilemma in the mind of the librarian in charge, and he said, listen to me, I have developed this habit of reading a page at one go over a period of time, a lot of efforts and practice. And he gave the explanation by telling that look at when a child is made aware of an alphabet the first time, some letters the first time, the child makes a lot of efforts to understand or read that particular alphabet, maybe Kakhaga, maybe ABCD. And after some time, the child is able to recognize, read those alphabets without making any efforts. After some time, the child would be able to make words out of those alphabets, and then some simple sentences, and then the child would be able to read the paragraph. And here he says that I am able to read the entire page at one go. I look at the page, read the entire page, and move to the next one. So here, over a period of time, an expert gains that sort of experience and knowledge, and that practice makes everything in the form of a chunk there in the mind of that expert. So the small micro concepts really get chunked at one particular place, and that particular expert can see through all those micro concepts very easily. But you see, when the expert self was a beginner, he or she did not have that ability, that capability to do. So what the expert should have done, that try to really convert those chunks in his or her mind into those micro concepts and convey it to the learners in a very, very clear manner. But that does not mean that you need to downgrade the quality of your concept or teaching. No, you have got to break it in smaller things which are worth learning by or understood by whom? By the learner. So this gap, as a teacher, I mean, we must be focusing more in understanding what the children are learning, not necessarily what I'm teaching. That process of learning is so important for us to look for. Now, teachers only delivering the things, they must look at how the children are receiving those things. And the moment we start thinking about how the children are receiving those things, probably we would try to make everything as clear, as visible to the children as possible. So visible learning will take place only whenever everything will be visible to the children. And that visibility has to come from the expert and from the teachers who are much more experienced and skilled and have more knowledge than the students at times. So what should be done in that case? I mean, how do we do away with this curse of knowledge? Now, I would like to say 2-3 things which we can do. Now, John Hattie had once said that a teacher must see the impact of his teaching through the eyes of the students, and students should become their own teachers. I mean, he is very clear about it. And when he says that the teacher should see through the eyes of his or her students, that means that we must know how much the child is understanding what we are trying to convey to them, and there can be different methodologies to really know it in between. I mean, we shouldn't wait for the end of the lesson. We can do it in between also, to which we call as formative assessment and all that. So that is one thing. Second is that we must think aloud. When I say we should think aloud, is that when I'm teaching there in the classroom, when I'm trying to make children learn something, I should try to make things as simple as possible, and also look at it how the children are responding to what I'm teaching. I mean, that process should be visible to me. At the same time, what I'm trying to convey to the children should be visible to the children as well. No, it would require some efforts. It won't happen so easily that I go and I give lecture and come back. No, it doesn't happen. I have to go to the level of my children. And when I say that we should go to the level of the children, that does not mean that you have to bring down your quality of knowledge. No, convey that knowledge, that very important knowledge to the children so that they are able to comprehend it. And so while you are teaching, you must not forget about the child's difficulties in really breaking down that information into small pieces, which you should do as much as you can for the child. You should co-construct the success criteria. Now, what is that success criteria? I mean, here success criteria is that what I'm trying to convey or make children learn, they learn it. So they must be very clear about it. We must sit together with the students, tell them this is what I expect you to do once I finish my lesson. This is what the success look like. I mean, that should be very clear to the children. And the third thing which we should be very careful about is that after completing the lesson or in between, we usually ask any questions. Now, change from any questions to hinge questions. So when I say hinge questions, what does it mean? Now, hinge is actually something which joins a door and some fixed thing around which the door rotates. So this is what hinge questions may be, that I have tried to make children learn something, and then based on that I would be taking another concept to build upon. So this hinge question would tell me whether the child has understood that base which I have already tried to make child understand, and if yes, fine, I will go ahead with the next concept, and if not, I'll do it again so that my children are able to understand what basically I wanted to. So ask very specific questions which will give you understand whether the children have understood the concept or not. It can be in the form of oral question, it can be in the form of some quiz, it can be in the form of some questions. So that will depend upon what you want to do and what that particular topic is. So ask hints questions. Don't ask any doubt, any questions. Have you understood it? Now, how would you know that the children have understood or not until unless you really have got something in front of you in terms of the answers or questions from the children? The fourth thing is, which is very, very important, once again, that before I go to the classroom, we must have a review by a peer. So we must have a peer review. That is, a colleague would give us an idea of the one who is not expert in that particular topic or subject should be the one with whom we should discuss that this is what I have prepared, will it work in the classroom or not? And if that colleague says that I understood what you are trying to say, it means you would be able to make difference in the classroom also, because those children are also the ones who would not be having much idea about the concept which you are going to discuss in the classroom. And the other very, very important thing is that when I said that quality of questions will tell about whether the children have understood it or not understood it, and if there is some confusion, what is that area of confusion. So here, one thing which is very, very important to be done, if curse of knowledge is to be removed completely or its impact is to be made little less than what it is otherwise, we must allow our children to ask questions. And those questions can be not so good from your point of view, may not be that interesting one, but a child should have liberty of asking questions, because then only you would be able to see through the eyes of your children. Because if the children will not ask the questions, you would not know whether the learning is taking place or not the way you wanted it to take place. And here, these mistakes or errors which happen there while the children are answering questions, asking questions, solving problems, then it should be taken as a learning opportunity. We must make it clear there in the classroom that any error, any mistake is considered as to be a learning opportunity. It is not that a child should avoid any confusion by not asking questions because his friends or her friends or the teacher may laugh at him or her. They shouldn't really be worried about it. And that sort of culture should not be there in the classroom, that somebody makes fun of somebody else if the question may not be of that great importance or quality. So if we will do all these things, probably we will be able to really take care of that learning gap, which remains there despite the fact that the expert is making all possible efforts to making children learn or the trainer learn what he or she is expert in. So if we will do this curse of knowledge seems to be a very negative sort of thing, but then definitely sometimes that knowledge really blinds us from knowing that beginners have problems in understanding things that easily as an expert can think. So experts' knowledge and the learner's understanding should have the minimum gap. And whenever this minimum gap would be there, curse of knowledge is lost and our children would be able to learn and do better in their life. I hope it will make some difference in thinking process, and the teachers particularly and professional experts would start taking these things into consideration and look at the learner's perspective. Their level of knowledge at that particular time. Thank you very much. God bless us all.